Hi there, I'm Sarah Cunnington. Welcome to Drawn from the Word. Sometimes we find ourselves in impossible situations which drag on and on and on. There seems to be no end in sight, no resolution, no way out. When we ask God, how long? The heavens seem like brass. There's no response. Sometimes, though, it's actually down to us. It will take as long as it takes to learn the lessons God is trying to teach us. And the reason for this is that, in reality, all our deeper life lessons are learned in testing times. Psalm 13, verses 1 to 2 says this: How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? These words were written by David while he was running for his life as King Saul sought to kill him. I wonder what he would have thought of Peter's words, that trials and tribulations arrive to refine our faith, which is more precious than gold. It's very true, but it can also be very painful. There's another lesson God wants us to learn through trials and tribulation, and that is humility. Before he wrote this psalm, David had been riding on the crest of a wave. He was the most successful military leader the nation had known. They even sang about him in the streets. Saul has killed his thousands and David his tens of thousands. So it wasn't long before King Saul's insane jealousy forced David to flee the city of Jerusalem, leaving his closest friend behind, Jonathan, whom he'd never see again. Hiding out in the wilderness, the erstwhile hero was now a hunted outlaw, pursued by an implacable enemy, the king whom he'd served so loyally. Finally, David was forced to take refuge among Israel's enemies, where he was cruelly mocked and insulted as he feigned madness. It was a humiliation he could never have imagined, but this humiliation taught him humility. David had come from nothing. Some speculate that he may have been the son of a servant in his father's household. His father's other sons certainly looked down on him as a mere shepherd boy. Yet he would become Israel's greatest king. From an early age, he showed himself to be a courageous warrior and a gifted poet, as his many psalms testify. However, it was his faith and his humility that made him a man after God's own heart. So, what about us? What is our response to hardship and difficulty? How do we cope with chronic illness and injury? What about insults and injustice, whether at work, in the family, or even in the church? Do we get bitter and resentful? Is our pride hurt? Can we get angry at God? Do we take refuge in self-pity? Or can we be like the Apostle Paul and say that we delight in hardships, that we rejoice in them? That's certainly a bit of a curved ball, but as Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 10, That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Strong, but not in his own strength. He was strong in the strength of the Lord. Certainly, Paul went through some pretty horrendous trials throughout his ministry. This was not an idle statement. But it was true. For him, God's power was made perfect in weakness. So is it also true for us. We need to trust God in the midst of our trials and believe that it is possible. It may not be easy, but there will be a way through. Often, only when we get to the place where we admit that we can do nothing, when we run out of our own resources and we realize that God is God and we are not, then we learn to trust that his resources are infinite. From this place of humility, we must turn to him who humbled himself for love of us, who endured insult and injury for love of us, who was crucified for love of us. This is the time to come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in times of need. Remember that Jesus not only passed through the worst of trials and testing imaginable, but rose up victorious, and he holds his hand out to us to raise us up with him. He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is our beginning and our end. He is our eternal destination. He is the way through and out of every trial and tribulation that we can ever face. Thank you for listening. Join me again next week, and in the meantime, be blessed. Bye-bye for now.